Hey there! Welcome to Hauntify, where we bring you the most chilling horror stories, straight from Reddit. Sit back, relax, and let's start with today's scary Reddit stories. Blank pages. I remember the moment I realized my mother wasn't my mother. We were driving 1 second, her looking out onto the road, me fumbling with the radio, and the next second, her head was facing backwards. It only lasted a moment, but the image seared into my mind, her ponytail facing the steering wheel, allowing me full access to the twisted vertebrae of her neck. It looked medically impossible, and yet there it was, in front of me, with only my memory to prove it. Is something wrong? My mother was facing me, and I immediately jumped back, eyes widening. I thought her head was twisted again. I stumbled. I didn't want her to think I was going crazy, especially since I just got out of the hospital. I had bacterial meningoencephalitis, and I spent the last few months in the local children's hospital, though I don't remember much of it. The doctors said it was probably because of the concoction of medications I was served. I came home about a week before I saw my mom's neck snap in the car. My parents threw a small welcome home party with a few of my friends, and it was the first time in a very long time that I truly smiled because I was happy, not to prove to my parents that I was okay. It's hard having to put on a brave face, grin, and bear it. Even before I got sick, I always felt something dark and gloomy inside me, but I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know where it came from or why. If my parents thought their only child wasn't happy, they would feel like they failed. They tried so hard to make everything perfect for me growing up, and I was ashamed that I wasn't happy. But on November 6th, everything changed. I was released from the hospital, I was ready to take my life back, and I was happy. I wouldn't let that feeling go, not when I know what it's like to lose it. "Honey?" my mom questioned, seemingly nervous at how I'd answer. I suppose she must have been walking on eggshells trying not to upset me, not that she knew she needed to. I never told her or my father about my episodes, and they never noticed. "I'm okay. It's just going back to school. I missed so much." "I know, but everyone there loves you. You'll have a great day." She smiled at me, but it was devoid of any real emotion. She was just anxious about me, stressed. That's all. I smiled back, trying not to look at her neck, trying not to imagine it snapping. Nothing weird happened for another week. Well, except our crappy Wi-Fi hadn't crashed. I held on to my happiness, grasping it for dear life. The universe had given me another chance, and I couldn't waste it by sinking into myself. At school, everyone asked me what it was like being in a coma. I don't know how the word got around, but I was kept in a medically induced coma for the majority of my stay. Sadly, I did not remember what it was like, because I didn't remember anything. Time just skipped by. One moment I felt sick, and the next I was leaving the hospital. No in between. I hope I never remember. Passing periods at my high school are like any other, a pack of wild students crammed together, trying to move against the tide to get to their next class. I was one of those students when time stopped. Everyone stopped. I was in the middle of a crowd of people when they all stopped, leaving me trapped, encircled by statues. I paused, waiting for them to move, but after a minute, I realized that this was another glitch. I reached forward, trying to push past the boys in front of me, but my hands went through them. I stepped back, afraid, and tripped over my feet, falling into the people behind me. "Hey, watch where you're going," someone yelled and roughly shoved me away. The boys in front of me turned their heads, and I could see in their eyes that they were real, not holograms or hallucinations. I didn't reach back out to test this, though. I muttered my apologies to whoever I fell into, and quickly rushed to the library to work on a school project, hoping to distract myself from what just happened. I wandered around the endless shelves, adding more and more books to my pile. The dust covering my fingers was worth the reprieve reading would bring me. Sitting at the table furthest out of sight, I took out my computer and started flipping through the first novel. My heart leapt into my throat and I felt my fingers go still. The pages were blank. All of them. The entire book was blank white pages. I reached out and opened the next one, and it was blank too. And the next one. And the next one. I had to remind myself to keep breathing, and an involuntary tremor worked its way through my body. Blank pages aren't inherently fear-inducing, but they're terrifying when they make you question your sanity, the fabric of your reality. Looking back, I should have stayed calm. I shouldn't have left school, but I was scared of going insane, and scared that there was something seriously wrong with me. So, I ran out of school and drove to the beach. It was only 5 miles away, and the hardest part of the drive was going through the woods on the outskirts of my town. The forest was dense and encircled our community like a halo. If a halo could burn with hellfire. The trees were packed so tightly together that they almost blocked out the sun, and every once in a while there was a new rumor about what lives beyond the dirt road. I once saw a little girl in a dingy white dress climbing a tree out there. I saw her fall just as my parents' car drove past. I tried to get them to stop, to help her, but my mom said that she would be okay out there, even though she was alone. Anytime you see a baby bear, Mom told me, there's a mama bear waiting behind a corner, and if she sees you near her baby, she will be very, very mad, and will never see you again. I understood why I couldn't help the little girl, but I never stopped seeing her blood-soaked dress in my dreams. Over the years, I've heard that killer clowns, serial killers, feral packs of raccoons, cults, and ghost children live in the woods. I've only believed in one of those stories, and it's not the one about the raccoons. At this point, I had probably made the drive at least 15 times on my own, and over 100 with my parents. I knew that I would only spend 10 minutes in those woods if I kept my car just under the speed limit. At 15 minutes in, the radio lost signal. At 20 minutes in, my gas meter stopped going down. 30 minutes in, the clock paused. And at an hour in, I started getting worried. The road was familiar. I could explain away the radio and the clock and the gas as hallucinations, but my mind couldn't fake that I'd been driving down the same road for over an hour and gotten nowhere. Every couple minutes, I got out of my car and left marks. A book in a tree, 2 branches crossed, spilt pages. I even punched a tree. It didn't leave a mark on the tree, but it did bruise my hand. As I drove, I saw my marks and foliage, always in the same order. Book, cross, paper. Book, cross, paper. Book, cross, paper. I drove the 10-minute loop over and over again, wishing for the cycle to end and for the sands of the beach to reveal themselves to me. But as the saying goes, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. I couldn't tell if I was losing my mind or God had lost his grip on reality. Maybe it was a delicate balance of both. It took me exactly 10 minutes to turn around and exit the forest. I didn't relax at the sight of my hometown, the radio spurring back to life, the clock ticking once more. My mind was more at ease being lost than having to pretend it had returned. Is there something wrong with me? I asked that night at dinner. The moment the words left my mouth, I wished they had stayed there. What? Of course not, my mother said, but her head was backwards like that morning in the car. With each word, her neck swiveled her head back and forth, letting me see her blank expression and then her long hair, each turn leaving behind a cracking sound that floated in the air like smoke rising to the ceiling in the pits of hell. Dad? I turned to face him, hoping to see my shock mirrored in his eyes. He was quietly eating, seemingly oblivious to my mom's head being backwards, and my question. What? He said through a mouthful of food. Is there something wrong with me? He didn't respond. Instead, he just kept eating like we hadn't been speaking. Dad. He turned his eyes to mine, his naive to my desperation. I think there's something wrong with me. I've been seeing things and I feel scared all the time and I don't want to go back to the hospital. Will you help me? He pondered this, chewing a bit more, and then he turned to his wife, who had righted her head, and said, "How was work today, honey?" Like I wasn't even there. Perhaps I wasn't. Maybe I never made it out of the coma, and this was some kind of purgatory, meant to make me go so insane that they have an excuse to send me to hell. That night as I went to bed, I remembered some of the conversation between my parents and the doctor while I was in the hospital. Mom, will we be able to see her, check in, and tell her we love her? Doctor, let her settle in first. We can find ways to tell her for you. We'll send you updates as she progresses through the program. The program you set for her, of course. Dad, what about visiting? Do you think it'll be good for us to talk to her while she's in there? Doctor, yes, of course, although I can't promise she'll hear everything you say. Now you two must remember, you are in full control of her treatment from this point forward. The only choice you are not empowered to make is ending it. Mom, of course, of course. Dad, we want her to be happy and make it through this. Doctor, and she will. She's strong. She may not be in control of her healing right now, but the body can do amazing things when given the chance to rest. Dad, it's like a vacation, right? For her mind? Doctor, exactly. A vacation she won't know she's been away on. Later in the night, some memories of my parents talking to me while I was under came back in a dream. I could see myself lying in the hospital bed, my mom and dad each gripping one of my hands. "We love you, dear," my mom said, her voice quivering and tears threatening to spill over. Through the haze, I could feel her grip my hand in hers and run her fingers over my cheek. "We don't like seeing you sick. You have so much ahead of you. We'll see you on the other side of this." My dad didn't say anything to me, only pressing a light kiss to the back of my hand. I could feel that his face was wet with tears. The dream ended with my vision fading out into a long haze. I could hear the steady beeping of my machines, and then a languid pressure in my head. I was only in the coma because the inflammation in my brain wasn't going down, and it was causing me a lot of stress, or at least that's the explanation my mother gave me. Laying in bed, the happiness I felt when I left the hospital was all but gone. I knew it was too good to be true, and that the shadow that lingered in my mind would never let me go. Some part of me wished I died in that coma, but another part of me knew that if I did die, somehow the afterlife would be much, much worse. A couple days later, a note appeared on my nightstand. "My precious daughter, we love you so much and are so grateful that we get to be your parents. You are our world." It was kind of strange, but I guess it made sense. My parents had never been comfortable showing affection or talking deeply, so opening their hearts in a note seemed like something they would do, especially if they were trying to reach out to me. They were being suspiciously clingy, and I think maybe they heard me at dinner, and it took a while for them to process what I said. Either way, the hospital wanted me to check in with a therapist since I went through a traumatic medical experience. Dr. Woods was a kind young woman whose eyes were the realest thing I had seen since I woke up from the coma. They reminded me of how colors looked before I got sick, vibrant and full of life. Now, everything was dull and fuzzy, like my brain hadn't loaded in the details yet. We talked about my missing memories, and I opened up to her about seeing things, but I didn't mention what I had seen or my drive in the forest. I hadn't gone back to those woods since. I felt like if I went in, I would never come out. Or I would leave as something else, like I did after I was sick. Visual and auditory hallucinations can happen after being in a coma for as long as you were. If they don't stop between now and the next time I see you, I'll send you to get an evaluation at the hospital. Next time I see you? I thought this was a one-time thing. We'll be meeting every week. Why? Because you think I've gone crazy? She scribbled something on a piece of paper. No, of course not. I'm just here to help you adjust. It's hard on the mind to be taken out of the world for months and then spontaneously thrust back in, especially when you're experiencing symptoms associated with that change. I'm here to support you and make sure that you have everything you need. Her voice was soft and comforting, like your favorite blanket on a cold winter night. As we neared the end of the session, she told me that sometimes our thoughts don't mean anything, that they just show up and we can choose to let them stay or to ignore them. She said that, like our thoughts, what I was hearing and seeing was just meaningless garble my neurons were creating, and that I should acknowledge them and accept them into the background of my life. If I focus on them, she said, I would be wasting my time and giving myself anxiety over what is essentially just chemicals in my brain. I was starting to feel better about myself, like this was just a normal thing for people to experience when they're in a coma, until she handed me the paper she wrote on. She told me to read it when I got home and that she'd see me at my next session. There's nothing wrong with you, the note read, the you underlined about a dozen times. Trust your gut. Don't do anything stupid. You can't go back to how it was before. Don't shut down on me. Trusting my gut meant that there was nothing wrong with me and everything wrong with my town. I was the only one who saw past the illusion, but on some level, Dr. Woods did too. She didn't want me to make a mistake, but how could I know what the right decision was? I couldn't trust anyone, but I could trust myself. I didn't want to shut down, whatever that meant. Probably some kind of psychologist talk. The paper disappeared from my room within the hour that I read it, and with its departure, my hypothesis cemented itself in my mind. I didn't come back to the right place on my way home from the hospital. I went a week without drinking water once. Biologically impossible, I know, but the limits of my new world weren't the same as the world I came from. I conducted the experiment both because I was 99% sure that the water was drugged with something, and because it was my first attempt at killing myself. My thought process concluded that dying, or going back to the hospital, would send me back to my reality. In the 7 days that I drank no water, I would have died twice in my world, and I felt like I was dying every moment that I didn't rehydrate. The thirst was unbearable, but the thought that I wasn't in the right place was even more miserable. I hadn't wanted anything as much as I wanted to go home. I wanted to be alive again, not floating away in some alternate reality. Every day that I stayed in a world where books had no words, and trees extended up forever into the sky, and the internet hadn't updated since November 6th, was torture. If someone sent me to this place, it wasn't with good intentions. As I grew more paranoid and skeptical of the world around me, it seemed that reality stopped trying to trick me. It knew I didn't believe in it. Like I said, every tree on my street went up into the sky forever. There was one day where all of the roads in the town ceased to exist, replaced by impossibly green grass. The sky blinked at me when I looked at it for too long, and the internet hadn't updated since the day I came home, or what I assumed to be the day that I switched. There were no new news stories, comments on Instagram, or weather notifications. I didn't leave my room for what I thought to be days, but eventually I stopped checking the time. It didn't change anyways. The only time that the digits on the clock progressed in value was when I left my room and went about my daily life. It seemed that staying in my room and staring at the wall was not a productive use of time to my new reality, and so it didn't deserve to use up my time. I could be upset all I wanted, but if I wanted the days to go on, I had to be happy. I had to pretend to be happy. Imagine staying up all night chasing sleep, but blocked from reaching it by your anxiety, and every time you look up at the clock, it blinks back the same time. Life simply could not go on if my shadow peeked from around the corner and tinged my brain black with its darkness. As a kid, I thought of it as a shadow. But looking back, it was depression. I have always had depression and anxiety, but I never spoke up about it. Isolation was more comfortable than acknowledging that I wasn't okay. I was ashamed at the thought of my parents feeling like they failed, and I was guilt-ridden that I couldn't be perfect for them. I kept my sadness a secret, and I think that's probably what got me into this mess. The breaking point came for me when I left the house. There was a thick fog, and I could barely see my feet as I walked in a straight line towards nowhere. Locking myself away wasn't getting me anywhere, so I figured I should open myself up, show the world that I was not afraid of it. Walking brought me to the edge of a cliff. There were some daisies in the grass nearing the end, but I could tell that they weren't real. There was a chilled breeze blowing past my ears, but the flowers stuck straight out of the ground like they were plastic. Looking over the edge of the cliff revealed nothing to me but an eerie cold and more fog. I knew why I was shown a cliff. I knew what the stupid decision was, and what the cliff wanted me to do. I did the stupid thing. I jumped. It was the closest thing to floating, the gray fog whooshing by, and the sense that I was in control of myself for once in my life. There are no shadows in the sky. At the same time, I knew that was all an illusion. The shadow brought me here, wanted me to succumb to it. The cliff didn't want me to jump, and still I did. It was selfish to take myself away from the world, but I knew I would do it again if given the chance. There was nothing to live for if nothing was real, and my world was not real. The fall didn't last forever. Right before I hit the ground, if there even was one, I came back to myself at home, sitting with my parents at dinner. "Why did you do that?" Someone cried in anguish right behind me. I whipped my head back, not seeing anyone. "Why?" They kept crying, but I couldn't find them. "She's gone." This time a whisper. "Why did she go? Why did she do that?" "I don't know," another voice screamed back. I tore the house apart trying to find the cries. I was crying too at this point. My room was a disaster, the furniture flipped over and books everywhere, all of their pages blank. "Hey," someone called to me, soft and yearning for my response. I turned to the voice, and it was Dr. Woods. She was across the table from me, my parents flanking her. I was sitting in some kind of interrogation or intervention. The kitchen was back in order after my escapade. There was no evidence of the voices or crying. "You remembered," said my mom. "You remembered what I said to you that night." "What? I don't—" Dr. Woods shushed me, saying, "Just listen for now. Please, don't make this harder than it has to be." I nodded, wanting to get whatever this was over with so I could go back to the cliff and send myself to another reality. Whatever you take away from this, remember that your parents love you very, very much, and none of this was meant to do you any harm. We all want to see you happy, and sometimes this program takes a while to adjust to. "A while?" interjected my dad. "It's been years. If we knew this would have happened, we never—" My mom reached her hand out to cover my dad's. "You know we didn't have a choice," she told him. "If we did, this wouldn't have happened." My parents looked much older to me, at least 5 years. The vibrance that I saw in Dr. Woods' eyes was now in theirs too. They were real, like her. Were my eyes full of life? Was I real? "You must have realized it by now, haven't you?" Dr. Woods asked me. "You're dead. You killed yourself 3 years ago. You were one of the first to enter the program." "Honey, please," my mom cried out to me. "She needs to listen," Dr. Woods told her. "I'll be quick, I promise. Either there's a bug in your programming or your mind never accepted it. We've reset your experience over 50 times, and each time ends the same." She didn't need to say how it ended. We all knew. The same way my life ended. Your program is full of glitches because we have to keep resetting you. Eventually, the glitches got to the point where you are now, and the directors decided that you needed to know the truth of your reality, Your consciousness is inside of a government-sanctioned computer because you committed a crime, and you must be rehabilitated. The program is not written into law yet, but you were a good candidate and handpicked by our agency. You will live in this simulation until you are 85 years old, at which time you will peacefully die in your sleep. You can't leave this town, but as long as you remain alive and making progress, your life is in your hands. Why did I do it? Kill yourself? Ask yourself. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details of your past. Mom? I choked out. I'm so sorry, I said through sobs. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did that. Please forgive me. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. You can say your goodbyes after we finish, Dr. Wood said, authority dripping from her voice. No longer was she the kind-hearted therapist. She was my judge, jury, and executioner, and with one click of her computer, she could send me into oblivion. Now is your only time for questions. After today, you will go about your life however you wish, and you will stop making us reset the program, or there will be consequences. As if on cue, my mother's sobs grew more violent, and she coughed out blood onto the table. I knew it wasn't real by the dull red of her vomit, but the message was clear. I wondered if they could hurt my family more than I had already hurt them. I won't mess up your computer if you do one thing for me, I asked, hoping she would decline my request. I didn't deserve mercy. And what would that be? Let my internet update. Let me see what I've missed out on. Let me see what my life could have been. She thought this over for a moment, then conceded. I suppose that can't hurt if it makes you comply? Anything else? Will you let me go to the beach? You'll get there. One day, she said sweetly, then promptly exited the room, leaving me with the last two people on earth I could face. Mom? I stumbled over the word, then fell into her arms as she and my dad scooped me up and we cried together, racking sobs that shook each of us, each one more real than the last, in a fake house, in a fake town, in a fake world. I'm so sorry, I tried to say as I desperately sucked in air. We forgave you years ago, my mom told me. Please forgive yourself so we can all be at peace. Please. I said, yes, I will. I love you so much. But it came out as suckling gasps as tremors raked through me like a tornado. I think they understood, and so they responded in much the same way. We stayed in a puddle together until we were too tired to stand, and as I began to fall asleep, they slowly faded away. As the last breath of my parents blew away from me, I reached out for them, finding only a grief-stricken chill and the warmth of the wooden floor. It's been years since that day, the last day I saw my parents. Dr. Woods showed up once in a while to check in, but I never so much as looked at her. There are still things I don't understand about my existence, like why I ended my life, or how long I've truly been here. I feel myself growing older, my bones aching and my back creaking. I never married, had children, or got a job. I spend my days on the internet, trying to reconnect with the world I took myself from. I wish I never died, but I know that if I went back, I would have made the same choice. The program took away all of the painful memories of my past life, but they didn't take away the pain. I don't know why I killed myself, and I think that is my punishment, to endlessly wonder why I brought myself here, why I wish I reached out to someone, or that I got help, but I can't go back to that moment or to my life from before. I ended my story. My life is as blank as the pages of the books from my school library. Please, whoever is reading this forum on Reddit, help me find the computer I'm on. I am from Massachusetts, and I know where multiple government agencies are around Boston. Please message me if you know which ones I'm talking about. I need someone to shut this computer down so I can face my fate. This is not my real purgatory. I will pay for my sins at the hands of God, not at the hands of man. I hate myself for what I have done, and I hate that I am willing to kill myself again. But this is hell. Please, for the love of God, help me turn the computer off. I don't want to die again, but I can't live in this world. The glitching never stopped. I don't know what I'll wake up to in the morning. Give me peace. Shut me down. Shut it down. A soiled diary found in an attic. These are the pages from a diary written in the back of a maths workbook. The previous owner had retrieved it from their mother's possessions upon her death, where they entrusted it to me. It is unsure if the mother was the writer of this diary, as no name is mentioned, and the cover has long been lost to time. This would become the first in my now extensive archive. 0508, 1991. They left me. Becca, Andrew, and Sarah all fucking left me here. They've left basically everything here, including me, and driven off while I was having a pee in the bushes. I had to go far away because I didn't want them to hear me. I've been sitting here for 6 hours, and I'm not sure they're coming back. Just because they turned 16 before me doesn't mean they can treat me like this. It's not even funny. They're supposed to be my friends. What do I do if they don't come back tonight? Camp? On my own? Like building the tent and everything? God, they had better come back. I'm still just in shock that they could do this to me. It's so mean and unfair, and they're supposed to be my friends. Weirdest part is I don't even remember hearing Andrew's noisy car driving off. God, he really needs to get a better car. It's getting late right now, so I have to figure out where I'm going to sleep tonight, because I'm guessing they are going to leave me for the night just to mess with me. 06.89991. Last night was awful. I didn't sleep. It was cold, it was wet. I slept on the ground with all the bugs and dirt, just because the stupid tent is so complicated. I heard a dreadful scream too, and I know it's probably foxes, but it's still so creepy. Also, how do people in movies just make fire like that? I used all the matches, and still couldn't light the pile of sticks I made at all. I found the sparky stick with the metal part, but I don't know what to do with it. I bashed the two together for a solid hour and only got a couple of stray sparks. I'm now currently wearing all the jumpers I caught with me underneath my coat. I ate some of the jerky and crisps we had, but I'm gonna need to get into the canned food, and I don't even know how to open it, so that will be a problem when I come to it. I don't need to worry about things that aren't affecting me for now. When the hell are they going to pick me up? This is so mean of them. I don't know how long they think they can keep this going, but Mum knows I left with all of them. I'll be missed if they don't pick me up, and they will be in so much trouble. I'm going to try to make fire again. 07/08, 1991. The dear woman visited me last night. She was really nice and helped teach me a few things. I was pretty scared when I saw her, but then she was really nice and her voice was so calm, I didn't even notice she was completely naked. When I saw dear woman, I realized just how pretty she is. Like no shampoo, no conditioner, not even a hint of hairspray, and her hair was perfect, like Julia Roberts. She wanted me to call her dear woman. Even when I asked her for her name, she just kept saying dear woman, but I think Julie fits her so much better. She was so smart, though. She knew all about starting fires, finding berries, and she was so good at showing me how the tent happens. She even taught me how to wash my hair out here in the woods like she does. I'm going to look so good when I'm back. Becca is going to have a fit. The only thing she didn't know much about was how to open the cans. I will probably tackle that problem myself later today. When Julie dear woman left, she told me I shouldn't stay in this area because a dangerous cat that's going to be coming through soon. I told her I'm sure my friends will pick me up before that cat can get here. This camping thing isn't so bad when you have a warm fire and a warm tent and warm food. I don't remember having it before dear woman, but I even have a warm knitted blanket now. I bet Becca is just laughing at me now with everyone. Becca is such a bitch. Joke's on her, I guess. Because of Dear Woman, I'm actually kinda having a nice time. I'm beginning to appreciate the quiet time out here in the woods, like I'm becoming one with nature itself. Also, I feel bad for writing so many swears in my diary yesterday, but I feel like scribbling them out would only betray the genuine emotions I had at that point in time. 08/8, 1991. There is a thick fog all around me. I'm so glad that I got carried away while getting wood for the fire because I don't want to go far from the safety of my camp right now. There has been a sinister chittering coming from the fog, and I don't like it at all. For a minute I thought that I heard the rumbling of Andrew's ancient Ford groaning its way through the forest. No one came out of the fog, so I decided to just stay in my tent. I even heard the thumping of Dear Woman's hooves coming close to the tent, but something about it felt wrong, instead of the comforting glow I felt from her, before I now felt a cold dread. I might have believed it was Dear Woman if she hadn't already told me she was heading as far from here as she could. I'm glad I didn't leave the tent and just hid under my blanket. Earlier, when the weather began to clear, I could have sworn I saw a slender silhouette in the distance. It was sliding its way between trees and heading away from me, so I couldn't get a good look, even though the fog was getting lighter. I didn't think they would get me today. Becca and the others are probably going to make this stretch out until Sunday when I'm expected at home. I wish they would come back sooner, but I doubt it at this point. I have enough wood until tomorrow, and the fog has mostly cleared up. Not sure what to do for the next few hours of daylight. 09/08, 1991. Last night I met the chittering creatures. They sort of look like badgers, but all black and walking on their hind legs. Maybe a little more shorter than a badger would be on its hind legs, but I think that's the best description. They were just rummaging around my camp late last night with a couple of them, just enjoying the warmth of the fire. When they noticed me watching, they were skittish until I offered them the last of the jerky. These little things loved the jerky. I think they were still hungry, and unfortunately, they were just as confused as I am when presented with a can of beans and no can opener. I think I'll name them chitters, after the noise they make. The chitters have a lot of personality, and each one seems to have their own unique quirks. My favorite one being a chitter I've named Munch, because he has a habit of sneaking behind the others to playfully bite their butts before running off immediately. I couldn't stay awake after a while, and seeing the creatures beginning to settle in front of the fire, I decided it was time to go to bed. When I woke up this morning, my new friends had left, but they had left cute stick sculptures strung up around my camp. I think it's pretty, and maybe a thank you from my friends for giving them a nice place to rest and a little snack. They've collected so much firewood as well, so I'm not going to have to worry for the next few days. I'm so lucky to have made such kind friends, even if only briefly. It's evening now, and I think I've finally managed to stab into a can of beef stew, but it's hard to eat with all the noise coming from down the hill. I think it's those foxes again, but I might be wrong because I swear to God for just a second I saw the face of an old woman deep in the forest earlier. Fuck Becca, but I'm too tired to hate her right now. This has been a lot. 10/08, 1991. She's dead. Dear Woman is dead. Her head was left just outside the edge of the camp this morning. She was so nice. I can't even believe something would do this to her. Last night I saw something. It must have been when her head was left, but it was too dark to see the head there. It was lit up by the faint light of my fire. I saw a large cat. Its fur was jet black and moved with an otherworldly glide. The worst part is I thought its face was familiar. I don't know how, but I think it was the face of the old woman I saw the other day. This is getting fucked up, but something is telling me to stay put. There is this instinct to not leave the comfort of this nest I've made for myself, so I think for now I won't. I'm going to dig a grave for Dear Woman's head. It'll be a lot of digging considering her antlers, but she's worth the effort. I have enough wood, I have enough food, and I'm sure they will come back to me tomorrow. If not, then I'm sure I will see my mom soon enough, because when I don't turn up tomorrow, she is going to be here in a flash. 11/08/1991. The fire is still going, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to abandon it soon. I can hear Andrew's old Ford and Becca's voice out in the distance. I think they've forgotten where they left me, but I'm sure if I just head down the hill where they are, I can lead them back to pick all the stuff up, and I can get out of here. The fog is really thick again, but I have to at least try. My food supply won't last much longer, and I just want to be home.